Okay, so I talked about preservation in beta, having done some time walking, a couple Dragonflight dungeons, just setting preservation up as I would any other healer. Um, However, didn't really have large opportunity to really play around with the abilities or the talents or anything like that. So now that it is live, I was actually looking at the talents for both specs for Invoker and decided to just reset them and start over. So I could go through each ability and passive um, and stumbled onto what I'm going to call an improved version of the setup I had in beta for preservation. It's more or less the same with a few tweaks. And I think if what I was using in beta needed anything, it just needed a few tweaks. Just to feel a little more like an actual healer. It was fine, it was functional. Definitely could have benefited from a few tweaks though. So let me go over the abilities and then talk about the talents. So I got rid of two abilities, Tip of the Scales, which I never used, and Time Dilation, which didn't seem to work as well as I thought it was going to. I thought it was going to be a good single target cooldown, and it kind of sort of worked that way. Not as well as I would have liked. So I kept Reversion, which is your heal over time spammable ability. I swapped out Verdant Embrace for Living Flame as a large single target heal. Kept Echo, still playing around with Echo. I think Echo is going to be more of a situational when you need extra healing. I'm thinking as we level through Dragonflight and get to the end game, and start doing mythics and PvP and all of that, you're going to see more need for Echo until people get a little more geared towards the end game. Emerald Blossom you have by default. That is your AoE heal. Um, Dream Breath, which is your larger AoE heal. Spirit Bloom, which is your spec specific heal. It heals um, more individually. Your enhancement ability was I replaced Tip of the Scales with Zephyr. I feel like having a enhancement ability that affects the party rather than my own spells is probably going to be better. Um, and then replaced Time Dilation with Verdant Embrace as a single target cooldown. It doesn't really work as a single target heal because of the cooldown, which makes it work a little wonky. So I think this is probably better, and it has some situational um, talents anyway, so it kind of does work better as a cooldown. Rewind, which is an AoE cooldown, which has proven itself in a few different situations. Carterizing Flame, which you kind of have to take because it's higher up in the tree. I don't know that I would take this otherwise. And then Rescue, which I'm playing around with as kind of a leap of faith. It's almost a better leap of faith because it's a target on location ability. You don't have to be ahead of the of your ally or your target to use it. So as far as the talents go, the starter build that um, the game gives you kind of shows you taking a little bit of everything, kind of a hybrid build. And I'm noticing that it's actually better to kind of go down one side as much as possible. So for Invoker, Your right side is your green spells, your healing abilities. Your left side is your damage abilities, usually your red abilities. The middle is blue and utility. So, as you see, I mostly went down the right side, which is the green side for healing. I went over to the left as far, um, no more further than to take the spell interrupt, which I kind of wanted. So it starts you with expunge, which is your dispel. You kind of have to take verdant embrace, otherwise I don't know that I would really take it. And then that goes into cauterizing flame, again, kind of higher up in the tree, so you kind of have to take it. And then everything else just focuses on healing for the most part, and then you end up at with Cypher. And then I took some things for Living Flame. A lot of talents really emphasize Living Flame, um, and it's in the second. It's in the same spot that Penance would be on Disc Priest, and it works the same way. It's just not a channeled ability um, whereas Penance is. So it does while its base healing doesn't do as much as say Verdant Embrace. When you factor in all the other passives and everything else, it does end up being your biggest single target heal because you can spam it. And then I took some talents for Hover. So Hover now jolts me forward and gives me a movement speed increase. So for the moment, um, I think that's how I'm going to use it. That's how I have been using it. It's kind of nice having a little bit of a speed buff with 2 charges. Um, yeah, it took Obsidian Scales because it's kind of nice having a shield damage mitigation for PvP, for Mythic Dungeons, what have you. Um, Took Permeating Shell just because I had to. I don't really use any damaging abilities. It is nice to have something that does slow movement speed um, in certain situations, I suppose. And then that is it. Took about one of the only talents where I had to choose. I took the one for Tail Swipe because I think it works a little bit better than Wing Buff does. And then for Preservation, again, it kind of works the same way as the Invoker talents do. So the left side is more your green abilities, your healing abilities. The right side is more your bronze abilities, which seem to be more kind of utility. And then the middle is kind of a mismatch of the two, of healing and utility. So I started out, um, as you can see, I started out more on the green side, and as I ended up further down, I ended up more on the bronze side. Which I think, since these are a little more specific to your spec, that's probably fine. Um, doesn't seem to be as much of a drawback there as it does with, say, your overall class talents like the Invoker talents. Um, Kind of feels like you're missing something as you get further down if you um, try to take everything. Which again, the starter build kind of gives you that conclusion. You will get more points between 60 and 70, so I'm guessing it's like every other point. So I'm thinking like maybe around 5 or so, unless you get one every level. I haven't really seen anything one way or the other than you're getting more points between 60 and 70. So you get Echo by default, which you can unlearn, which makes no sense because you can't take anything else. Dream Breath, which is fine. I actually end up using this quite a bit. The 30-second cooldown is perfectly fine. And then it also lets you take Spirit Bloom, which it surprised me these two are so close because they're both empowered spells. And my experience with Invoker and Empower spells is they're all generally really good. So I was surprised they put two of them so close together, especially higher up in the tree. I could see putting one and then maybe burying one a little bit lower. Um, so you kind of have to take these. So if you're trying to do more of a simplified build, um, Spirit Bloom, from my experience, is kind of a ability you'll use some of the time. It's not somewhat situational because it's more single target healing. It'll either heal 1 to 3 allies. Um, if there was ever an ability that it kind of works the opposite way that what is it, like Firebomb does for um, Mage in a way. It's kind of cleave healing, sort of. Um, it's really Dream Breath works perfectly fine because it's AoE healing, so you're doing initial healing and then over time healing. Spirit Bloom does just direct healing. It's just a matter of do you heal 1, 2, or 3 allies. So it just works a little bit different with the whole empower idea. And then everything else again just focuses on healing. I did take 2 abilities that work with Emerald Blossom. So I actually get a second Emerald Blossom um, quite often. It says 30% chance, which so you use Emerald Blossom, sends out 2 flying seedlings, and those have a 30% chance to turn into another Emerald Blossom, and that 30% chance seems to happen quite a bit. Um, I'll get it more than a few times through one dungeon run, um, at least when I've done Legacy of Tar. So, wasn't necessarily sure about those, just kind of took those to use the points to unlock the next tier. Um, I think that's a weird part of the talent system is it locks you out of moving down until you spend so many points. I guess there's a point there. It doesn't want you skipping around and missing something once the class is to be a little more well-rounded, I guess, for balance sake. I guess I can see that. I guess it kind of makes sense. Um, and then on the bronze side, took revision, of course. Tried to stay away from rewind and time dilation. Rewind, as I said, has come in um, handy. It's proven itself on more than a few occasions. Essence burst is a big thing in whether you're um, doing damage or healing with Invoker. Um, it has to do with your essence abilities and your. I thought it was your empowered ability. Yes, because they use. Um, well, no, I guess I thought on Devastation it was your empowered abilities. I guess it's your essence abilities. Um, yeah, you'll get it intermittently. It's not something. It says it has a 20% chance, but it's one of those things that has a 20% chance. It seems like it's a lot lower. Um, and then from there, just kind of utility enhancement kind of um, abilities. The Yeah, pretty much it. Took Time of Need, which summons a effigy of me, which heals any ally that falls below 20%. Can only happen once every 90 seconds. It seems to be somewhat useful. I just took it to kind of play around. I had 1 talent point left. Um, yeah, so it seems like it might not seem like it. Looking at the talent, it's a much more consolidated build. Seems to work much better. Um, I have done much better in the dungeons and battlegrounds. I've done a little bit of just random PvP. I've done Legacy of Tar a few times, and I could tell an immediate difference with um, doing both of them. So again, still figuring things out, still learning, still getting used to everything, but getting more comfortable, kind of knowing what to instinctively, kind of what to use when. Um, Also, did want to mention Blessing of the Bronze um, affects movement ability of party and raid members. Didn't quite fully understand that in beta. And then noticed in PvP, it is a group buff. So, um, whatever movement speed ability you have, if you have Blessings of the Brawn buff, it will um, reduce the cooldown by 15% for 1 hour. So there you go. That seems to be a big thing with Invoker is your movement speed and the movement speed of your group, whoever you're playing with. That's why I thought Zypher would probably be good. I was curious. It reduces AoE damage and increases movement speed, which are both good on their own. So together, seem pretty good. The only thing I don't like about it is it limits itself to 4 nearby allies within 20 yards, which, depending on what you're doing, may or may not be an issue. Um, and I think that was pretty much it. So, yeah, I don't think you're going to be able to do the hybrid builds that you did with the old talent trees, is what I'm noticing. I did the same thing for Devastation. I kind of went down just one side, and that seemed to work a lot better than trying to take a little bit of everything. I really don't heal if I'm doing damage, and if I'm healing, I really don't do damage. So it seems a bit um, counterproductive to take abilities for one or the other. I was looking to see, I was curious. And now I can't find it. Let's see here. Oh, that's right. There we go. So you actually have 2. You don't just have Essence Burst. You actually have 2 for Devastation. Disintegrate and Prior. Okay. So as I said, works a little bit differently with each spec. Um, Greatly simplified Devastation down. Um, Focused mainly on the red abilities, your fire abilities. Frost seems to be more of a utility. Um, it does what frost abilities do. They do um, your blue abilities, I should say, do what you would expect them to do. They do frost damage, and frost damage slows movement speed and casting and things like that. So it's not like playing a frost mage or anything like that. So a few of them are fine. Permeating chill is fine for devastation. I do tend to use Azura Strike intermittently here or there. And yeah, I think that's took Firestorm. Firestorm seems to work well. It's a let's see here. it's an AoE that just constantly does damage, which is kind of nice. That was about the only new ability I took. And then I did take, let's see if I can find it again. I did take one that lets me, of course you can never find anything when you're looking. What was it over here? I did find one talent that when you use deep breath, let's see here. No. Oh yeah, there we go. Recall. So you can use it again, and it'll take you back to your current location, which is actually kind of nice. So, and then you can hit it again and end up right back where you were. So it leaves a little effigy when you use it, so it just takes you right back there. So kind of like how uh, kind of like how arcane mages have their ability that teleports them back, or monks, warlocks that have those kind of movement abilities. It's kind of built in there, so definitely think that's worth taking a talent point for. And it's fairly high up in the tree, so you can get it pretty early on. Um, I don't use deep breath all that often. Um, However, when I do, it's nice to be able to go back to where you were rather than have all the targets kind of chase you again or move to face you or something like that. So, yeah, probably going to be pretty good in PvP, I imagine. So, yeah, and then taking some of the other abilities that work with Pyre. I actually use this more now. It was kind of a fill-in ability because it just didn't really work with the overall rotation. You'd kind of use Living Flame, maybe Azura Strike if you had multiple targets. Um, and then I was using Fire Breath and Disintegrate for the most part. So this actually procs, so it actually gives you a chance to, again, still kind of use it as a fill-in, but it's actually getting a little more of a benefit. So, yeah. And I think that was mostly everything. Let me look through here. I don't think I forgot anything. Yeah, you really don't end up with a lot as far as like spec-specific abilities. Everything's kind of built into your talent, which I have to say I kind of like. Um, you don't feel so overwhelmed. If you want a complicated build and a bunch of abilities, you can take those. If you want to simplify things, you can do that as well. With Healer, I look for certain abilities to do certain things. So I have a few more. With damage, DPS, I like a more simplified build just because you're trying to run through a rotation. Um, so kind of the best of both worlds. Um, yeah, and the fact that you can actually take a counter spell and interrupt is nice. In the past, some classes would let you do it for one spec but not the other. For some reason, it would take it away from you. So, yeah. So, there you go, folks. Hope you enjoyed that. Hope that was helpful for you. And thank you for watching.